All right, welcome to another episode of our famous, all around the world,
infamous, most incredible
Wellspring Podcast.
Yes.
I've never understood why you say it's like famous, but then it's what then infamous? Like what is
infamous? It's like special. I think
Really?
that's what it means. I don't know. I'm from Ruskin. I
Maybe
don't
we
know.
need to look up the definition of
probably
that.
Maybe saying something really bad.
Yeah, we could be.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It is. Can you? February's almost over.
I know.
Can't even believe it.
I know.
It's crazy,
It is crazy. So today, I know we've been during this for this second part of the Roman series. We've been doing two Sundays, two messages together each podcast. So today, we're going to talk about the last two Sundays of Romans, and really. We're done.
It's over.
We're done. We're done with Romans.
So 16 chapters. The first 8 chapters. I hope you. It's probably been the most fun series I've done in the 10 years of our church. I've really enjoyed it. It's been fun. It's been, as a preacher, it's always fun when you get to deliver what you've actually enjoyed. Sometimes you preach. I'll be honest with you. Sometimes you preach and you're like, So this was fun.
Yeah.
To enjoy it myself and then to deliver it. I think I'm wondering if it comes out better when it's something I'm really enjoying.
Well, Romans is such a great book, full of so much just depth and wisdom.
You've got these 16 chapters. The first 8 chapters are really, what God's done through us, through his son. He's given us grace. I mean, we know the famous verses, 3:23, for all of sin, not shinned, sinned, shinned,
hey,
shinned,
bleep that out,
shinned, for all sinned and fallen short of the glory of God. And, you've got 6:23, for the wages of sin is death. But the gift of God, it's all this what God's done for us. And I'm assuming Paul did it intentionally, but then you get to the second half and it's really, okay, now what are you going to do? Now, what are you going to do? We have a responsibility.
So why don't you remind us what the first 2 weeks of the second part were?
Yeah, so I think we are designed to worship.
Yeah.
So you get to the second half of Romans, and we're called to worship. We are worshipers. There was this, the fabric inside of us, the DNA is that we worship something, someone. We're created that way. Mm-hmm. And, probably most of us that are listening or watching, or we would say worshiping God's the most important thing. Yeah. But I think if we're honest with ourselves, we all worship something that takes his place. Yeah. And then, that we're peacemakers, that this is kind of what we are. And I skipped around just... If I had time, I would, this would take all year to preach this book, but we don't have that. So,
but we do, but we do have all year.
We do have all year. We do have 52 weeks of the year.
But I think the Peacemakers message was such a challenging message to most people. I mean, I've sat with multiple people since that message of just how that is now challenging them on what they need to evaluate in some of their relationships. Like, how are they actually going to be a peacemaker and be what God called them to be in that relationship?
I think it's a challenge to me because I know that it's a major growth area for me. And I said in that week, and I know we're beyond that, but I said in that week that you're either in one of two categories. You're either walking into an environment and you're making peace, or you're walking into an environment and there's division. Yeah. And there's no in between. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. You're doing one of the two things. And you've helped me with this. I talk a lot with my eyes. Yeah. I talk a lot with the volume of my voice. It's the older that I get, the more I learn. It's less the words. I mean, not that I'm diminishing the words, but it's the approach. It's how you do something is just as important. And
absolutely.
So
sometimes we know the right words to say, but we still wear the wrong approach on our face and our body language. So last Sunday was all about leaving a legacy.
Yep.
Like, you are called to leave a legacy. And so, the legacy is actually the impact or impression you leave behind. So in your family, in your workplace, in the world, what are you doing?
Yeah.
To impact the people around you, the kingdom of God by how you're living your life.
Jesus left a legacy.
Yeah.
I mean, we're still following this man.
Yeah.
And I'm using that term loosely. We're following this man for 2,000 years.
Yeah.
That generations after generation have never seen. And yes, we've experienced him, and yes, we follow him, and yeah, I'm not diminishing that at all, but none of us have seen him.
Yeah. What
that tells me is he left a legacy.
Yeah.
I mean, there are stories that are told. There are moments that were had that you go, man, I want to be with this person.
Yeah.
I want to know who he is. Yeah. And I think one of the first things that you learn about Jesus is that there's no place in Scripture where Jesus lived for himself. Mm-hmm. I mean, the whole ideology of Christendom is you die to self.
Yeah. Yeah.
And if you're going to leave a Christian legacy, that's what you're signing up for. That's what these new churches and this new model just doesn't get. Like, this is not a feel-good thing. Yeah. It's not, well, I just feel better about myself, and so I come into a relationship with Jesus to feel better about myself. That's not what it. You are dead. I mean, Romans says that we die. The first half of Romans, we die to ourselves. We are a slave to ourselves, and I
think that was very eye-opening, because we do live in a culture where it is about ourselves. We're
taught that.
And we tell people, we always tell people like, don't let anyone take advantage. And so we have skewed.
You could do whatever you want to do.
We have skewed the I wouldn't say definition, the meaning of what it means to be a servant and to be a slave when it comes to your relationship with Christ. Yep. Because it's like, no, I'm independent. I have, it's like whether it's the choice of am I selfish or am I selfless?
Yeah.
And we sometimes look at that in our relationship with other people and not in our relationship with Jesus. Like, am I going to have a selfish relationship where it's all about what he's doing for me on a day-to-day basis of, what can I get out of my relationship with Jesus, rather than it's a selfless relationship where I have died to myself and he is in absolute control of my day-to-day, my life, and my future.
I think we're sitting across this table as we're on the other side of 40. Mm-hmm. And so it's a little bit easier to think about legacy. Yeah. And I really, and again, I know we have people that are all walks of life that come to our church and are experiencing this podcast right now. I really want to speak to the teenager, like the 20-something that feels like they've got a lot of life left. And they probably do. Like, choosing now, like I often say, being prepared for the fight helps you win the fight. Yeah. And I think if you prepare ahead of time, I want to leave a legacy. Yeah. And, I poked the bear a little bit on this idea of leaving a legacy. It's not giving our kids more than what we have. Yeah. And that's fine. Yeah. I mean, it's one of the hearts of my life is I want to change the trajectory of our last name. I want to give my kids what I didn't have. And that there's nothing wrong with that. But at some point we have to ask ourselves, am I living for Jesus?
Yeah.
And I'll be honest with you, as your husband, as the leader of this church, like, I don't think I win every day at this. Yeah. I don't think I'm succeeding at this.
Well, I think when you just said, I want my kids to have more or better than what I have, so that I start this legacy. But I think sometimes we can focus so much on the temporal things.
Yeah, the earthly legacy.
Like are they going to have, money set up for them? Are they going to have, a business that I've left them? Yeah, those are all great, but that isn't what it means to leave an eternal godly legacy for your children. What it means is my kid, like, to me, this is what I would say, is I would want my kids to have a closer relationship with Jesus because of the way that I live, that they would be able to serve people more deeply and more sacrificially because of the way that I live. They would learn that it's not that the world is not about them.
This is not forever.
Yes. And so that's a little bit harder to do, I think, than it is to try to be like, okay, I'm creating this legacy and I'm doing all these, intentional things. I have a 401k and I have trust funds and I have businesses and I have life, and like we think of all these things,
because that's preached to us. Yes. That's jammed down our throat in the American culture.
But I think that if you can look, especially let's think that you're, maybe you're kind of like the season that you and I are in, we have an adult child and then we have teenagers. I can look at my kids and almost even see now already, like as your kids grow, you can see what you've impacted and what the good and the bad that you've impacted, the negative and the positive you impacted in your children.
I'm sure our kids can make a list.
Yes. And if you can sit and say, wow, like there's times I think you and I look at Dakota, who's our 21-year-old, and we think like he loves people and is nicer to people and is kinder to people than like we ever were or ever are. And so, I understand that doesn't give Dakota, an amazing retirement plan or like, or a house he can buy, but it does give him an example of what it means to live a life as a servant. Yeah. And
how does this impact Jesus? Yeah. Everything. And let me flip the coin. Can I flip the coin for just a second? So looking at the senior saint, the grandparent, and there's probably somebody listening that's like, but I've already failed. Yeah. I've already messed up. Like I can't go back and raise my kids. They're in their 30s or 40s or 50s, and I can't do that. And I would just say what's beautiful about the evolution of life is most of us, if you're in that category, you're 60 plus and you're like, dang, I wish I could go back and fix some things. Yeah. Here's the beautiful thing about life. Most of the people that are in that category have another chance. They're called grandkids. It's another opportunity. And that's what's beautiful about life is what we didn't do well in as parents. The thing that we didn't do well. I think one of the areas for me is I wish I would have been better. I'm getting better now. Mm-hmm. I think Liam and Layla are seeing this more than Dakota did. That I want to be a person that's known for reading the word like around them. Yeah. And praying and seeking the Lord. And I think we could have done better with Dakota. I think Liam and Layla are getting that a little bit more. But I certainly, when God provides grandkids for us, like I'm starting at the beginning. Like I want to be a person that our grandkids see. Yeah. This person's thinking about the next life way more than this life. Yeah. And so, and it's interesting if you end Romans, so you've got Romans 14, which is this idea of leaving a legacy. And we'll get to 15, which is finishing strong. Yeah. But you get to 16 and it's almost like chapter 16, Paul is like we've all seen a movie before, and none of us watched the end of the movie, but you get to Romans 16, and it's like the movie clips of Paul's life. He just kind of lists all these people, and you don't know some of them, you know some of them, and it's like
the credits. The credits. What did I say? Movie clips.
Yeah, the credits. The credits of Paul's life, and so and good. There's a lot of meat in it, but it was hard. It's hard to find some good stuff to preach through it. So I really ended this series on 15. Chapter 15 and just this idea of finishing strong. And I would say, April, I think I'm going to be 44 next month or 6 weeks away or 2 months away or whatever. Yeah. You're going to be 43. And I think I am thinking more about this than I've ever before. Like, how do I, again, we've got a lot of time left at Wellspring. I mean, we're only 10 years into this, so we got a long, we probably aren't even in the second quarter of our time, but my mind is thinking now at 44, how do I begin to think through handing this thing off? I mean, we're at least 15 years away. How do I begin to go, how does Wellspring, how does the next generation take over? And I think just as a church, I know we probably don't have a lot of pastors watching this, but I don't think the church has done a really good job at that. Yeah. I think we've held on, especially in our denomination we grew up in, we've held on for way too long. Yeah. This idea of it's my voice, it's my church, it's my thing, it's my deal, it's mine. And I think we've done a really poor job. Yeah. Raising up the next generation. I think for many of us, we want to hand something off to our kids, and not just biological kids, but it could be a spiritual kid, even in the circle that you and I run. And we're even seeing it even the last few months of people starting to hand off to sons and spiritual sons. And so that's kind of where my mind is going. And I think that's what Paul did. He's like, if you're going to, you can either finish, you can either not finish. Yeah. You know, we've seen that. And again, I don't want to name names, but we've seen that in the church world in the last year of just guys just not finishing.
Well, I think that's even just as a Christ follower in any aspect of, you know, serving the Lord, you can just completely dip out and be like, yeah, I'm not doing this anymore. And I think, again, yes, in the church world, you see it a lot, but I think during COVID, we saw a lot of people that were just like, this church thing, this Jesus thing,
I don't think I need it.
It's just not. And
I'll do the online thing. I'll do it while I'm sitting at the beach. And those I'm grateful for online, but like, you're not getting what you need. Yeah. And it's not just a Sunday service. Yeah. It's, you know.
Well, I think it really ties into the legacy thing too. I think finishing strong and leaving a legacy really go hand in hand.
Yeah, of course.
If you want to,
it is the Bible.
If you're going to leave a legacy, and the chapters are right next to each other too.
Yeah, it's amazing. It's amazing how that works.
And if you're going to leave a legacy, you got to finish strong in your life, you know. And I think, I don't know, I think in my mind, finishing strong and leaving a legacy. And I think let's remind people, like, your legacy goes farther and deeper than your children and your grandchildren.
And we all have, if you're listening today and you're like, well, I've got scars and I've got wounds, like we all do. Yeah. Every one of us have woulda, coulda, shouldas, or we all do. And the whole objective is whether we're talking kids or not, whatever we hand off, let's hand it off better than it was handed to us. Yeah. Whatever it is, church, business, family. Yeah. How about this one? Our country, you know, that's what's beautiful about our country, different than other countries, is every 4 years, you're handing it off. Yeah. Like, let's hand it off better than we got it. Yeah. And if we all did that, I think we would finish strong. So you can either not finish, you can finish bad, or really what we talked about in this chapter, and Paul talks about it, not us. We just regurgitating what Paul said, is you can actually finish strong, and, you know, making sure that we do that we finish strong. I love verse 4. It says, for everything that was written in the past was written to teach us, so that through the endurance taught in the scripture and the encouragement they provide, we might have hope. Yeah. It's this idea of the Bible gives us endurance and encouragement. Yeah. And I think that's what I would leave as we're leaving this kind of Romans
look
deal.
At Paul's life. I mean, Paul's life is 100% a life of endurance. Yep. And, you know, just recently at one of our Girl Tribe nights, we were talking about Paul and his time in prison. And his whole message to Timothy was to encourage him to have endurance and to not walk in fear. So he saw his whole life. I mean, Paul literally lived a life of finishing strong and having a legacy. And Paul did not start out.
He didn't start good.
Did not start good. He didn't have, I mean, the impact he made on people at the first half of his life was extremely negative and toxic. And then he gave his life to Christ. He had a radical conversion and completely, I mean, the Bible, he's one of the main writers in the New Testament, and it's full of encouragement and encouraging. He was encouraging Timothy at the time, and the people that were younger than him that were serving alongside of him. So essentially, almost like his child, his adult child that he was passing this off to. Son. Yeah, he was encouraging him to have endurance, to finish strong, and so we all have our Timothy in our life. Yeah. That is looking at us to see, and not in a critical way, but looking at how are they going to respond to this? How are they going to handle this?
I would say this.
How are they going to view this?
No matter what area, whatever season you're walking through right now, as you're listening to this, you're watching this moment right now in time, here's a question that has always helped me. Yeah. And I say people all the time, this is really dramatic, but I tell people all the time, if I followed everything I wanted to do, I would either be dead or I'd be in prison. Mm-hmm. Like, following my wants, wishes, and desires rarely leads me to a life of faith. Yeah. And so here's what I would say. I would make a list, and I've got a mental list. Yeah. I've got a list of people that my kids, my wife, my mom, my pastors, that if you did something that caused you to not finish strong, that you'd have to go to and tell them and explain to them and walk it out. Walk out what you would say to them and how you would explain it. And that may help you to get to the place where I can finish strong, because now I'm processing what it looks like if I don't finish strong. And so here's where I end kind of this kind of Romans deal. If you're part of Wellspring and you've been with us the last few weeks, and I know it was like September, October, and then a gap, and then we did it in February. I would lean into this. I mean, that's what I'm doing right now. I'm taking a book of the Bible and I'm just chewing on it slowly. And if you've enjoyed Romans, then just do that. Yeah. Don't read through the Bible just to get it done. Like let it sit in you. I would just tell people 1 verse, 5 verses, 10 verses is way more. And I'm all for reading the Bible in 1 year. I've done it. I've all done it. I think there's seasons for that.
Yeah.
But I feel like Joey Atkins is in a season where I don't know we need to achieve reading the Bible in 1 year. I just need to let it marinate in me. And so if that's you and you've enjoyed Romans, find your next book. I think staying in the Gospels is good. Matthew, Mark, Luke, or John. Romans is awesome. Acts is the first church. I go back to Genesis. Genesis is it's a
full of some great
ravaging stories. Book. Like, my goodness, you have you have homosexuality, you have sin, you have incest. I mean, you have all kinds of. When we were reading
Jerry Springer moments. A little bit about David at Girl Tribe Nights a couple weeks ago, I was like, guys, you don't even need like TV. Yeah. Like, just read the Old Testament, and it's like full of so much scandal.
Yeah.
And and we're so interested in that in like a TV show, and it's like, but we can like read it in the Bible, and then there's God's redemption along with it.
And we actually feel like we're doing something good.
Like most TV shows, God's redemption does not come at the very. They don't find it at the very end.
And if it's a Disney movie, there's always family drama. Some dad's dead, or some family members disjoined. I mean, every Disney movie is that way.
Yeah. So we hope you guys have enjoyed the book of Romans, and we're going to dive into some other great stuff in the month of March. We got Easter coming up soon. So we're just praying that you have that these first 2 months of the year have been ones that have been productive, full of joy, full of peace for you. And as we step into the spring, which, I mean, honestly, is there ever winter here in Florida? We step into the spring in Florida that you'll just see God's blessings in your life, see where he has showed up, and remember that he's been faithful to you. So have a great week. And we will see you Sunday. We have services at 8:15, 9:45, and 11:15.
Not 8:14.
No, 8:15. Yep. See you then.
Love you, church.